Let's get started. Welcome to everyone to our last session of spin-off Competence Lab. On 4th of July, we had previous sessions of designing, thinking, solving problems with new ideas. And today it's the second part. Also, previously we had another 8 sessions of spin-off Competence Lab with different topics of business model, speculative design, intellectual property rights, patents. If you would like to watch it, you can check it out in our YouTube channel of CU and also in the web page of the CU. You can, these webinars, they are totally free. These programs are educative for students, university students or young researchers. This spin-off Competence Lab was specifically developed for young researchers and students to be more creative, to develop these skills, which you can apply lately or in creation of your own business or in another programs or your work. So today, as I mentioned before, we have another part of design and thinking, solving problems with new ideas, which was prepared by Leve Freiwald and Katarina Knapp. Katarina Knapp has education in business and administration. Right now, she's a professor at the University of Kiel, and she gives the classes to the students and PhD students about the business, entrepreneurship, self-development, and relevant topics. And Leve Freiwald, he has education in industrial engineering with focus on computer science. Also, Leve works as a consultant at the Startup Center at the University of Kiel. And today, Leve will provide with another sessions of today's webinar. And these sessions will be, again, consist of the theoretical part and then practical part. We are live streaming these sessions also. They are recorded and you can watch it afterwards also. So enjoy today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I would like to give a floor to Leve, and let's continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. So welcome everybody to the second part of the design thinking workshop, solving problems with new ideas. I see that there are some participants who didn't participate in the first workshop. I will give you some more advices in a few minutes. You introduced Katarina Knapp and me, so I will go over that and directly come to a short outlook of the last session. In the last session, we learned and talked about the problem space. So about the six phases of the design thinking process, which is understand, observe, point of view, ideate, prototype, and test. So the last time we had a problem and we talked about this problem and understand this problem, and we are working here in concept board on working sheets. And we try to understand the problem in a very deeply way. Then we observe the potential customers or the persons who have the problems. And so we build up a persona for that. And after that, we had the phase of point of view. So we created how might we questions. The problem, to let you know, was the high quit rate and rising mental illness among PhD students. I provided a slide for that, and you can read it in the concept board later on. Today, we will enter the solution space of the design thinking methodology, and it will start with Ideate. So we are creating choices in the next phase. To all the people who weren't there the last time, I will shortly introduce how the workshop will take place and some more information for you. So together with Katharina Knapp, we worked out some videos for every phase. So I will show you before we start working every phase. I will show you a video connected to this phase with an explanation. And Katharina Knapp is a speaker of these videos. And after these videos, we go in the group work of 3. The teams of the last time will stay the same, and the new ones will have their own team, but I will explain to you with more details how to work on a concept board after we were watching the first video. I will tell every group which number they have, so they know where they have to work on the concept board. And when the working phase is over, 1 minute before, there will be a countdown, and I will tell you that there's only 1 minute left. So please come to an end, and we can go on with the workshop in the main room. Like I said, we are using concept board, and I don't show it right now. I will do it in the main session with the ones who don't know about it, so the other can have more time to work on their ideas. And at the concept board, you can use sticky notes or write directly onto the working sheets or drag and drop pictures. It's very free to use. Today are not the first 3 phases, it's the last 3 phases, so the solutions phase. Please make sure you're muted in the main session. And if you have any questions, please raise your hand in Zoom and I will come to you. It works also in the breakout session. So just raise your hand if you have any questions and I will come to you and talk to you. All right. And for all of there who are on YouTube following this session, you can have the working material on the webpage researcheu.cu.org. And there you have all the PDFs. You can do it on your own to learn about the methodology, but you can also, maybe you have the chance to have a team member of 2 or 3, and then you can do the workshop as well in team. All right. I just told you the problem, so the high quit rate and rising mental illness among PhD students. And I provided an abstract of a paper which deals with this problem or do research on it. So you can read it carefully later on because I placed it as well in the concept board. All right. And are there questions until now? Nope. Then we will start with the first video to the phase 4, and it's Ideate. So, one moment, I will open it up. And please listen carefully.
The next phase of the design thinking process is called Ideate. Here it is all about finding as many ideas as possible to solve the problem that was analyzed in the first 3 phases. Therefore, entering the 4th phase means we are leaving the problem space of the design thinking process and are now in the solution space, which also consists of 3 phases. In the first phase of the solution space, we are using different creative techniques to create ideas. When doing so, we are not yet evaluating the ideas, we are not giving feedback. Instead, we are building on the ideas and thoughts of the other team members. Also, we have to remember that we are now again entering a phase of divergent thinking, meaning we are opening up the solution space, we are going wide and wild, meaning we can be crazy in our idea generation and dream the impossible and hopefully also the possible. I said that we are using different creative techniques in this phase to generate ideas solving the problem we analyzed in the first 3 phases of the design thinking process. Generally, creative techniques can be categorized as either intuitive creative or as systematic analytical techniques. Before I will show you one method from both types as an example, I would like to give you some general facts about the 2 types of methods. Looking first at the intuitive creative idea generation methods. As shown in the picture, these techniques are unconscious thought processes which are characterized by sudden ideas. Insights are generated through associations or analogy building. There are 2 advantages connected with this type of techniques. First, we can take a holistic view, meaning we are focusing on the problem as a whole and do not lose ourselves in the details of the problem. And second, intuitive creative techniques are usually quick and easy to implement. Also because they require little prior knowledge of the method from the participants. On the other hand, we have the systematic analytical idea generation methods. You can already see from the graphic and from the name that the process is much more organized, more systematic. It is a conscious approach in which the problem is solved in many small steps of thinking. We are analyzing facts and relations consciously. They are varied and recombined. The advantage of intuitive creative techniques of being simple and easy to implement is the disadvantage of the systematic analytical methods. Here, usually more time is required, also because the techniques are usually more complicated. And also, there might be the problem of idea fixation, meaning that participants are never going really wild with their ideas, as they are staying in a conscious process, never just letting flow their creativity. As said in the beginning of this slide, I will now present one technique each, starting with the systematic analytical method. And the method I want to present to you is the so-called morphological box, which is one of the simpler methods from the systematic analytical side. I will explain the method using an example that I found online by a lady called Cherry Wang. She describes the following problem. How can we consolidate our personal items all into one when going out without a bag? And she also specifies a little bit what type of items she would like to bring. We want to bring warm water, some coins, a bank card, a key, a lipstick, and headphones. How are we approaching this problem using the morphological box? We first determine the functional requirements, meaning the system attributes of the different features that our solution should fulfill. In her example, Cherry Wang defined the following. First, it should hold or carry water. Second, it should be holding things. Third, it should be adjustable. Fourth, it should have an insulating material to keep the water hot or cool. And finally, it should be eco-friendly. The next step of the process reveals why it is called morphological box. That is, we are writing all these system attributes in the different rows of a table, or as headers of the columns if you prefer to do so. In our example, Cherry Wang wrote the 5 requirements in the different rows. Now the next job is to fill in the rows with all possible variations of the system attributes you can think of. So, what is holding water? We can think of a bottle, a dish, a cup, a balloon, a bladder, a water gun. Second attribute, holding things. A pocket, a bag, a container, a pouch, a wallet, and a shelf. Concerning adjustability, she can think of magnets, Velcro, something elastic, some sort of collapsing function, wire, and pegs. For insulating material, possible solutions are foam, ceramic, aluminium, vacuum double wall, stainless steel, and copper. And finally, eco-friendly materials are recycled plastic, glass, bamboo, cork, cardboard, and wood. So now that we have filled in the whole table, the next step is to select one attribute solution from each row to create a system concept. Cherry Wang has decided for a bottle, pockets, and containers, some sort of elastic, vacuum double wall, and recycled plastic. How does the finished solution look like? We have a water bottle with double and vacuum insulation. Also, we have elastic strips made from recycled nylon, which are therefore sustainable and also capable of holding miscellaneous belongings, such as the headphones. Additionally, there are zipper pouches to hold small belongings, such as the keys. And there is a bottom compartment, a container in which the lipstick and the coins find space. Of course, one could have also combined different solutions for the system attributes, resulting in a very different product. The combination can also be done systematically. One could try every combination and then pick the best, or it can be done randomly, or simply by selecting what seems to be interesting combinations, as Cherry Wang probably did. Okay. This is the end of the explanation of the methodological box and therefore also of the systematic analytical methods. This brings us to the intuitive creative idea generation technique I want to present, for which I chose the 635 method. A quote very fitting for this method is this one by Linus Pauling. The best way to get a good idea is to have lots of ideas. In short, the method is called 635 because there are 6 persons participating, which are creating 3 ideas in 5 minutes in each of the rounds. In total, this leads to 108 ideas in 30 minutes. How does it work? Every one of the 6 participants receives a template with a table on it. The table has 3 columns, one for each of the 3 ideas every participant is thinking of in each of the rounds. And the table has 6 rows, one for each round. When everybody has a template, the timer is set for 5 minutes. In these 5 minutes, every participant thinks of 3 ideas and writes them in the 3 columns of the first row. When the 5 minutes are over, everybody hands the paper to the person sitting on the left. Now the timer is set again for 5 minutes. In these 5 minutes, the participants read the 3 ideas already written on the sheet and then associate 3 new ideas. After 5 minutes, the paper is handed again to the next person. Again, a timer is set, the participants read the now 6 ideas on every paper and again associate 3 new ideas. This is repeated until every participant had every template once, meaning until all templates are fully filled in. This leaves us with 6 templates with 18 ideas each, which is in total 108 ideas. I said that in each round the participants are reading through the ideas written on the template they received and associate 3 new ideas. What do I actually mean when I say associate? We read an initial idea and then we can do the following. We can think about what could be substituted. Also, we can think of first or further partners for implementing the ideas. Working with partners can in turn lead to further possibilities of substituting parts of the idea. Also, we can explain in more detail how the initial idea might work. We can derive ideas, or we can reduce the idea, make it more concise and minimalistic. Another option is to create a great title for the idea. We can combine several of the ideas we read. Also, the participant could do a drawing, which might result in a completely new idea. Of course, one can also write a completely new idea without a drawing first. What is important when associating is to combine and integrate what one has read, to be as exciting as possible and at the same time to be as specific as possible. Going back to the result from the 635 method, we had 6 templates with 18 ideas each, meaning 108 ideas in total. Of course, not all 108 ideas can be implemented, so one has to structure and select the ideas. First, every person has to select their favorite 1, 2 or 3 ideas from their own sheet, and in the end the group has to select the 1, 2 or 3 ideas they want to further pursue in the phase 5 of the design thinking process. So how can the participants decide? What are possible criteria for structuring and selecting ideas? We could look at the potential for being successful, the speed with which the idea can be disseminated, the financial and the technical feasibility, and the risk that is associated with the idea. Also, we can include time as a perspective to look at the ideas. Is it a solution that will only work today, or has it the potential to be good also in the future, taking into account changes in the regulatory environment or changing consumer preferences. And of course, one could also look at how innovative an idea is. This is particularly important if one tries to receive external, possibly public funding for the idea. Two other very important but often overlooked criteria are personal preferences and skills of the team. When starting a business or just following any idea, one of course should be able to identify with the idea, one should like the idea, and also the team should have the necessary skills to implement it, or at least should be sure to be able to gain access to the skills needed. Of course, this is not an exhaustive list of criteria. Every participant or team can think of their own criteria. And also, these criteria are not just relevant in the intuitive creative idea generation techniques, but can also be useful in systematic analytical methods. Also relevant for both types of creativity techniques and in general for the whole design thinking process are these 9 rules. The first rule is to build on the ideas of others. This is not always easy. A good starting point is to try to use and instead of but in conversations. The second rule is to defer judgment. This is connected to the fact that one never knows where a good idea is going to come from, so it is important that everyone feels like they can say any idea they have on their mind and also to allow others to build on it. Third rule is to stay focused on the topic, meaning to try to keep the decision on target. Otherwise, you can diverge to topics far away from your original problem. Fourth rule is to fail early and often. You have probably heard about this before. Maybe you have also heard about fuck-up nights, where more or less famous people are telling not about their successes, but about their failures. The core of this rule is that failing means learning, and the earlier you fail with an idea, the earlier you learn and correct your mistake. Let's go back to Cherry Wang's water bottle. She has assumed that the customers find it important that eco-friendly material is used in the bottle. It could be that the design of the bottle is a lot more expensive and complicated because of this requirement. So after quite some time of developing work, making the product function and make it cheaper, she goes on the market with the water bottle just to find out that this is not actually an important requirement for the customer at all. So she lost a lot of time and money by not properly testing her idea, her assumed requirements early enough so that she can fail or learn early. Okay, the fifth rule is to be visual. Nothing gets an idea across faster than drawing it. Doesn't matter if it looks amazing or not. And actually, one can draw almost everything just by using some basic shapes such as circles, lines, and squares. The sixth rule is to only allow one conversation at a time. Your team is far more likely to build on an idea if everyone is paying full attention to whoever is sharing a new idea or thought. Next up is to think user-centric. This means you always think first about what your user wants and not what you have in mind yourself. Also, pay attention to the fact that your user possibly is not the customer. Rule number 8 is to go for quantity. I already said earlier to aim for as many new ideas as possible. It is far easier to sort out the bad ones than to come up with more when noticing that no good idea has been generated. And last but not least, encourage wild ideas. Wild ideas, even if not working at all, can often inspire others to come up with truly creative ideas. So try to ideate without the constraints of technology or materials in mind. As I said in the beginning, these rules are relevant for the whole design thinking process, but particularly in the phase of ideation.
Okay, that was the explanation to phase 4. Before we go and work together, I will show you all the concept board for itself, because it's a bit complicated to do it in the breakout sessions. So I will provide you in a few seconds a link to join this concept board. When you're there, you have a look like that. So many pages, but don't hesitate to ask if you don't understand anything in the breakout rooms. And in the lower left corner, you see the whole screen and where you are. So every group, if I zoom in, you can see it. Here you can see the group number. So group 1, 3, and 4 are reserved for the teams they worked on the last time. And the second one is for the new group. The group of Maria and Paul, I added Kirsche to you. Please make sure you tell him everything he needs to know to work with you in a team for the next phase. So the last time we had the T-shape and the triangle of similarities to get to know each other in the team. And after that, we dealt with the problem. So the high quit rate and rising mental illness among PhD students. And we had many questions. What is a real problem? What would we like to know? So we get deeper into the problem. As next, we tried to emphasize with a person who has this problem and tried to figure out a persona or build a persona of this person. And every time you need help to fill out the working sheet, I provided some slides with some help criteria. After that, we produced how might we questions. So I can tell you the how might we question of one team, how do we achieve a work-life balance for PhD students? That's one example. And another team had, for example, how might we notice mental illness among PhD students earlier before quitting is too late? For one team, they are all new. I will come to your breakout session separately. I provide this how might we question, how might we support PhD students when they are in a crisis situation? Like you see over here in the problem slide, you have a graph, and here's some crisis, the material crisis, the relevance crisis, and the graduation crisis. So think about that. And shortly to explain how you can work on these sheets. So this is the first worksheet. I will explain to you in a second. You can just over here go and erase something. You can draw, you can use shapes, you can directly text, but I would recommend to use sticky notes. So you can have your own color, you use a sticky note, just place it over there and then write into it. You can also rearrange the size of the font. So, and you can place it over there, and so you can work together. If you can't find your working sheet, just make sure you see this in the lower corner and just click there where you want to go. And with the hand clicked, you can also rearrange your view. And that's not possible over here. Okay. Then I will introduce to you the first worksheet for today. But firstly, I want to ask you if you have any questions until now. There's one in the chat. Okay, that was old. Perfect. Then we are doing the brain creativity technique, the 6-3-5 method. Here in this workshop, we shrink it a little bit to the 3-3-5 method. So it's not 6 people working around in a team and hand the paper to the next one. It's like 3 persons. So write down 3 ideas in the first line, idea 1, idea 2, and idea 3. And after that, you go to the next working sheet. I also placed arrows over there that you know where you have to go when you filled out the first round or the second round or the third round. Every time you add 3 ideas, and I have to say inspiration, like Katharina said, or development of further written ideas is appropriate. You can keep your colors or sticky note so you know what line is yours, but it's not mandatory. So in total, you have 15 minutes, and I will send you to the breakout rooms if there are no questions right now. It's prototype.
The next phase of the design thinking process is called prototype. Here we build prototypes for the most promising ideas that we have created in the fourth phase, the ideation. The aim of the prototyping is to make the ideas tangible. This is an important condition for the next step in the process, which is to test the ideas with the target group. Of course, one could just verbally tell the idea, but better communication and understanding is reached when the ideas are more tangible. You probably know the saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. One could go even a step further and say, a prototype is worth 1,000 pictures. So, what are we doing in this phase? We are building, painting, gluing, cutting, designing, drawing, acting, filming, in short, whatever is needed to make the idea tangible. Also, we should remind ourselves that we are now again at the transition from divergent to convergent thinking. After having created as many ideas as possible in phase 4, which could also be crazy and impossible to implement, we are more analytical in this phase. Because now it is about which ideas should actually be implemented, and there we can of course only take ideas that are working and that are also interesting for the target group, which is exactly what we want to test with our prototypes. So the resolution of our prototype should be fitting our progress in our project. If we are still in a very early phase, if we just came up with the idea and we are doing the first tests, we should keep the prototypes rough and rapid to allow ourselves to learn quickly and investigate a lot of different possibilities. Another good tip is that prototypes are most successful when the user can experience and interact with them. But I don't want to put you on the rack any longer. I want to show you some examples of prototypes. One very simple version is a sketch. So you just draw your idea on a piece of paper. Here you see the drawing of a robot vacuum cleaner. Even if just a simple drawing, it directly communicates a lot of information very quickly. If 10 years ago you said to someone, I want to produce a vacuum cleaner that drives around the house automatically, people would have probably thought of a normal vacuum cleaner that is maybe held by a robot walking or rolling around the house. With this simple drawing, it becomes clear that it will look completely different. However, one cannot see the size of the vacuum, how fast it moves, which material it is made from, what the buttons look like, and so on. For all of that, one needs different types of prototypes, such as a mock-up. A mock-up shows the overall impression of a system without necessarily be functioning. Here's an example of the company Nest Labs from Palo Alto. Nest Labs is an automation company that became part of Google in 2018. What you see here is a thermostat that adjusts the room temperature based on the outside temperature and the habits of the people living in the house. It is also Wi-Fi enabled and programmable and works with sensors when there are no people in the house. What you see here is a mock-up of a room thermostat which they produced just with a roll of duct tape and a printed out display. Again, there are a lot of things one cannot test with this prototype. And indeed, the only thing they wanted to test with it was in which direction people turn the thermostat in order to lower or raise the temperature. Another type of prototype is the so-called MVP, a minimum viable product. An MVP is a runnable version of a product which is provided only with the most necessary functions though. It has just enough functions to satisfy early customers who are providing feedback for future product development. Therefore, it is just important that the basic features work. Further, not so important features can be added later. Let's imagine we want to produce a red sports car with which we can drive super fast on the German motorways without speed limit. What of these 3 rows would be a suitable MVP? The first one, just starting with a tire, would not be, because a tire does not fulfill the basic need of driving on the motorway. Also, the scooter in the second row cannot be used on the motorway. However, the scrappy-looking black car on the last row is an MVP, as it is a runnable version of the idea of a sports car on a motorway. However, if the need we wanted to satisfy was to provide mobility in the city and we want to do so by a rental service of red sporty-looking cars, the scooter could be an MVP as it fulfills the basic need of mobility in the city. So it depends on the specific need we want to fulfill to determine what an MVP can be and what it cannot be. If we are thinking of digital ideas, such as computer programs and apps, a good way to make them tangible is to create wireframes. Wireframes provide an overview of the page structure, layout, information architecture, user flow, and functionality of the website or app. Again, as a wireframe is usually used at the beginning of a product idea, the styling, color, graphics are kept to a minimum. As you can see in the picture, wireframes can be drawn by hand or created digitally, depending on how much detail is required. The fidelity becomes higher the further along we are in the product development process. The last type of prototype I want to show you is the so-called user journey. It shows the end-to-end customer journey as a series of images or sketches. In the picture, you can see a very simple drawing of a user journey of connecting online. So what is happening in the story? Somebody wants to chat online and goes on the Play Store to find a chat app. She searches for chat app and receives a list with apps. She downloads the app, explores it, is interested and signs up. She is then starting to chat online, liking the app very much. She then receives an email advertising for the premium service. She is trying the service, paying for it, giving it 3 stars on Google Play and telling everybody how much she likes the app. This seems very simple, and it is indeed. However, it still helps with identifying the so-called critical assumptions of an idea. What are some critical assumptions of this idea? First, our idea needs to be part of the result list on Google Play. It also needs to be high up in the results list, and the name must be interesting for the user, so she selects the app. Then the app must be compatible with the system that she uses. And the user must understand and like the functions of the app. Also, one assumption is that the person finds friends in the app that she can chat with. In order to be able to advertise the premium service, it needs to be guaranteed that the correct email address is provided. And in order to be able to pay for the premium service, the user needs to own the payment method that we offer. These are just some of the critical assumptions of our idea. There are, of course, more possible. Another advantage of a user journey is that it can be used as a basis for a video or a comic strip as more advanced prototypes. One key term in this phase is the user experience, meaning the way how a user interacts with and experiences a product. How the user perceives the utility, the ease of use, and the efficiency of a product. User experience is subjective, and it can differ between different people. In the picture, you see that the parents and the baby have a totally different user experience of the same product. Here, it makes also sense to differentiate between the user and the customer. Often, user and customer are the same person. In this example, this is not fully the case though. While the child has a very, let's say, different user experience, the parents who are the customers are highly satisfied. And of course, to generate sales, one should also look at the customers. We are almost at the end of this introduction to prototyping. One last slide about how to create them. When creating physical prototypes, I can highly recommend going to makerspaces or community workshops that pretty much all big cities have nowadays. In Kiel, we have one right close to university, which is called Fab Lab. There you can use a whole lot of different machines, such as 3D printers, laser cutters, or milling machines. When it is more about digital ideas, I can recommend the software Canva for creating logos, menus, or descriptions, and Figma for creating mockups. One last advice. First, think about what needs to be tested. Based on this, build the prototype as simple as possible. I mentioned this several times before. One should only invest as much in a prototype as it is absolutely needed. The aim of prototypes is to test a function and not to create the perfect looking product. So try to be as simple and as cheap as possible. This also helps when receiving negative feedback, as it is then not too complicated or heartbreaking to still change the idea and the prototype. Also, one does not need to always test the whole idea with one prototype. The aim can be to just test one of many functions, or the color, or the direction in which the user turns the thermostat of a small home device. So the prototype only really needs to be good enough for the user to experience this one aspect. Only when one has done some initial testing, the prototypes should become more refined and consequently more costly as well.
Okay, so I showed you the video of prototyping before we choose one idea to do the prototype on, because I think due to time constraints, it's easier if you have an idea what comes next when you choose your idea. Right now, I will show you what to do. It's the idea evaluation process. So you have, I think most of you have 5 ideas placed there. And then next to the page, I provided some criteria to choose. So in the lines over here, you place, or in the different columns, but in the zeros lines, in the 0 line, you can place possible criteria to evaluate your ideas. So you have 8 minutes. I will send you to the breakout rooms in a second to find 5 categories for rating. So place them over there. Discuss in the team what should be or can be good categories to rate your ideas. So read through your ideas and keep the problem in mind and write it down. After that, I will do a countdown as well in concept board. And after that, I write down in the chat as well, discuss and give points for every category of an idea. 0 is very poor, you can read it over there, and 5 is very good. And after that, I will tell you that you have to choose the best idea. So sum it everything up. And at the end, in the last column, there should be the sums, and the highest sum will win. So you have one idea to go on with. Are there any questions related to the idea evaluation process? So now you rated your ideas, and I looked at every sheet. There's no idea doubling the same number. So you have one specific idea to work with and build a prototype on. So please make sure you drag and drop the sticky note of the winning idea to the next working sheet, the prototype working sheet. And we heard, we just watched the video of prototype. So be creative, try to draw anything, add pictures, you can drag and drop it from the internet, you can visualize your idea in any way. The working sheet is a bit to help you with that. What are possibilities like a sketch, mock-up, minimum viable product, role play, user journey, or something like that. So, and in the beginning, you place your idea over there and you ask yourself why, what assumptions do you want to verify? All right, I will place you in the breakout sessions if you have no questions, but I give you 5 to 10 seconds. Just raise your hands. Okay, then go to prototype. You have only 8 minutes. Normally you have days or weeks to build up prototypes. But right now it's only to get in touch with this phase. So have fun in the breakout sessions. I know the time is way too short to build up a good prototype, but it's only to keep you in touch with the methodology, and just you don't listen only how to do it. You think about your idea and how to build a prototype. And I think it's very important to learn the methods in a proper way. So right now, you could have built it up for 2 hours, I think. That's the fun part. We are entering right now the last phase. I would love to talk about every idea and the sort of prototype you were thinking about, but I think we have not the time to do it. Right now, we want to watch the last video for the last phase, the testing phase. So when you build up a prototype, you want to test it with the target group, with the potential customers or users. We will watch the video right now. And after that, we have a worksheet of testing. But due to time concerns, I will show you the working sheet and tell you what to do there. And you can do it if you want to on your own or in your team after this workshop and make a good test scenario for your prototype. But then you see the worksheet and you know how to do it, and then you have known all phases of the design thinking process. Great. Right now, I will show you the last video for today. And it's the testing phase.
The last phase of the design thinking process is to test. Here we use our prototypes to find out whether our in phase 2 defined target group likes our idea, whether it actually solves their problem. So what are we doing to find out? We show the prototypes to the potential users. We let them try out our prototypes, interact with them. While doing so, we are carefully observing the users, and finally, we are openly discussing the prototype with them, asking questions, hearing their feedback. And with this feedback, we can then adapt our ideas and our prototypes, making them more fitting to the problem and the customer needs. I said that the whole design thinking process is iterative, which is indicated with the lines between the phases. You can imagine that latest here we are having one of these iterations, because surely you will adapt the prototype after the testing with the target group. It may be that they are satisfied with some aspects of the prototype, which you can then make more concrete, more sophisticated in the next prototype. Or they might have new ideas for the prototype, which you can then include in the next round. Or they might not like something, which means you have really made the most out of this phase, as finding out so early saved you a lot of time and money. Imagine you just brought the idea to market as you thought it was right. Then the target group would have not bought it. With the prototyping and testing, you were able to find out much earlier, and therefore you were also capable of adapting your idea much earlier, before you spend a great lot of money. Besides the described iteration between prototyping and testing, your tests might also lead you back to the ideation phase. Maybe your target group makes you understand that the idea you chose is just not fitting. So you go back to your list of ideas and pick another one to build a prototype for. Or through the conversation with your target group, you might realize that you have not understood the problem correctly in phase 1, or did not fully get their emotions in phase 2. If that is the case, you have to jump back to the beginning of the design thinking process and go back into desk and user research. Again, this might seem like a failure to you, but in reality, it is just an early and very valuable learning about the user group. Also be aware that the process is only shown as a linear progression for simplicity. In your personal design challenge, you can go through it in a different order. The order shown is merely a suggestion. For example, it might be that you start with an already existing idea, that you have developed a research project, or that has been developed by research and development department of a company. Just because you already have an idea in the beginning and also already a prototype, that does not mean that it's too late to work with design thinking. You can and should still step a bit back and analyze your problem in depth, as well as empathize with the target group. Additionally, I would like to remind you that we are in a phase of convergent thinking, meaning we are using the feedback we have received and process it in an analytical, rational, and logical way. This is not the time for craziness and irrational thinking. Before going out and testing your prototype, you should do a bit of planning. First is to determine the test scenario, meaning you should determine where and how the testing should be done. In which situation of the tester's day do you want her or him to do the test ideally? Even though face-to-face tests are often more valuable, sometimes it might be needed to test through a video or voice call or even asynchronously. Afterwards, you should determine the test procedure, what is happening when. A good idea is usually to first just show the prototype and let the user interact with it. Literally, put the prototype in the user's hand and stop yourself from telling the user what you are intending with it and how it functions. Instead of explaining everything directly, let your user interpret the prototype her or himself first. Watch carefully how the user interacts with it, what she or he tries out first, maybe also what she or he does not get. Also listen carefully what they say about it and what questions they are having. Afterwards, it makes sense to ask some specific questions you are interested in and that you have prepared beforehand. Also make sure that the testing team knows their roles during the test. Maybe have one person leading the conversation and one person taking notes of how the user interacts with the prototype and of what has been spoken. Of course, it can make sense to have more than 2 people doing the test, for example, when including a role play. Just be aware that a situation might feel a little bit overwhelming for a test user if she or he faces a group of 10 people. Additionally, think about the questions you want to ask during the tests. Here I would advise to first brainstorm all potential questions your team can think of. Then identify themes and order your questions accordingly. After you have pooled the questions, delete redundant questions and determine a natural order in which you would like to ask them. It should feel like a normal conversation to the user, and also you should always leave enough room in your planning to ask plenty of why questions and questions related to the feelings of the users or when the described feeling or situation has happened last. After the test, you should document the test results, ideally also with photos or videos. And of course, finally, you should summarize your findings and draw conclusions. It is these learnings about the user, thoughts, emotions, and motivations that we are doing the whole testing for, so that we know how to innovate for him or her. Here, the often used term fail early, fail fast, fail often also comes into play. As explained in quite length before, the reason why we are directly testing the very basic prototypes is to determine as early and as fast and cheaply as possible what does not work with our idea. We want to fail in order to build the perfect product or service for our user. Some people criticize the word failing in this context, as in reality we are far away from failing. Instead, we rather learn early, learn fast, and learn often. Some other tips for the interview part in your testing are summarized on this slide. Be aware that you can use these tips also in your user interviews in phase 2, where you get to know your user and empathize with them. Of course, the first thing of every conversation should be to introduce yourself and all people present during the test. Second, make sure that only one person speaks at a time, and that should be mainly the user. You should speak 20% of the time max and let the user speak instead. This corresponds to the next tip. Ask short and open questions. And regularly check back whether you actually understood the motivations of users by asking a lot of whys, thereby digging deeper for stories and emotions. And finally, of course, the conversation should be on eye level. When doing the interview, always have in mind that people don't always think what they say, don't always say what they want, don't always want what they do, and don't always do what we expect. A classic example is the experiment of how many people are buying eco-products. When asking people in front of the supermarket before starting their shopping how much importance they attach to eco-friendliness and whether they buy such products, a whole lot more people say yes than it later shows at the cashier. Therefore, you must dig deeper and pay special attention to surprises, contradictions, emotions, and problems. I also said that you have to document the feedback. One very easy but still powerful tool is this feedback grid. You have 4 categories of feedback. You note down strength, meaning things that the user liked and mentioned positively. Second, you write down the weaknesses, hopefully constructive criticism. Next up are questions that resulted from the experience or presentation. And finally, there are any ideas that the user mentioned during the testing. Again, I would like to remind you that feedback is something to look forward to, no matter whether it is positive or negative feedback. You should always perceive it as a present, also no matter how ugly the wrapping might be, because it will save you a lot of time and money. So do not try to sell your idea, and also try not to justify your idea or your prototype. If the user does not understand it or a function of it, then this is a valuable learning as well. You might have the feeling that testing is a whole lot of work, and of course it is time-consuming. However, I would like to emphasize that a small number of tests is much better than no tests, and that it is not always needed to do a study with 100 people, because most problems are already found when just testing with a very small number of users. One often quoted study is a meta-study by Nielsen and Landauer. They looked at 11 studies about the software industry. Each of the studies plotted how many usability problems were found by test users of different types of software, such as office systems, calendar programs, and a banking system. And you see that the curves all look more or less alike. To make it easier to grasp, I show you another chart just showing the average of the curves before. First insight is that, of course, 0 users give 0 insights. Keep that in mind. Even talking to one person is already a lot better than not testing at all, as with this one person, this one test, you have already learned almost a third of all there is to know about the usability. The second user brings up the detection rate by another 20%, and with 3 users, you are already at about 70% of all usability problems being found. Of course, the more users you add, the more you will know, but what you learn per user is highest for the first testers. And after the 5th user, you know already 85% of all problems, and if you test with 15 users, you discover almost all the usability problems there are. So I would recommend testing with a rather small number of users, as this is much better for your time and money budget, and then iterate back to the prototyping phase where you fix the problems discovered and maybe make the prototype more concrete before testing again on a smallish group. However, 2 words of caution. First, the cited studies were all from the software industry. Therefore, it is not clear whether we can actually transfer it to all other areas of business. And second, if you are in a very late stage of your projects and you are about to go into mass production, of course, just one problem might lead to very high follow-up costs. Therefore, you might then want to do some final tests with a very large number of users. Again, I would like to finish this phase with a quote. There are no facts inside your building, so get outside. It means that in order to receive honest and useful feedback, you cannot ask your family, friends, or co-workers, but you really need to get in touch with the target group. And this is again not just true for the testing, but also for the understanding, meaning phase 2 of the process, which you might need to jump back after your test results. Because don't forget that design thinking is not a linear process, but iterative, meaning you are not finished after going through the phases once.
Okay, that was the explanation for the phase 6, the testing phase. And she also explained the working sheet, so I don't need to do that. If you have any questions for the test scenario and how to deal with it, just let me know. I think for you, we don't work on this working sheet right now. I think it's a bit difficult if you don't have enough time for the prototype to build up a good one or tangible one. Then it's way more difficult to build up a test scenario around it. But you heard about how it worked, and I will leave you with a short classification of the design thinking process. It's a very common picture, and it's a combination of the design thinking, lean startup, and agile methodology. So the design thinking is in the very beginning of anything. So you have a problem and you want to find a solution. So you have the phases here. Not everyone is placed here, but these are the phases of the design thinking process. And if you found a solution, what is very good, you can go to the next phase, like the lean startup phase. So they go into the other phase a bit. And there you can see the build, measure, learn cycles. So one prototype is not enough. You test it and you get feedback, and then you learn from it. You build another prototype and you give it to your potential customers or users and measure it again with your test scenario. And then you learn from it. And that you will do it all the time until you have a very good product and you can go into market. But to be honest, it's not the same as here. Mostly it looks like that, because sometimes you have to go one step or two steps back to redefine your idea, your solution. You have to talk to the people who have the problem. And so it's not a linear process. It's a very chaotic way, but you will find a very good solution. And this methodology is very popular all around the world due to its stunning results the methodology has given to many problems of the world. And the last part is the agile management. It's like when you go to market, and it's a kind of project management, but it's a very common picture. And right now is the time. If you have any questions, please let me know. I hope you had fun at the workshop and learned a lot. The working material is all on the webpage research.eu.cu.org. So you can download everything. And I think we also provide the whole slides, mine as well as Katharina's. And so you are able to do the whole process with a problem you may face in your research work or something like this, and try to bring as many people together as you can from different fields and try to do it with them with more time. And then you will receive very good solutions on your problem. And like the last time, I will leave you a quote of Albert Einstein. We can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. So thank you all for your participation. I hope you learned a lot and had fun. And if you have any further questions, maybe within the next days, just write an email and I'm happy to answer all your questions. Okay, thank you and goodbye.
Thank you so much, Leve.
You're welcome.
For the webinar, thank you everyone for participation. During this month, we will provide you with the certificates, and please share the information about this webinar with your friends or colleagues. I think it's very useful and very interesting. Thank you to everyone, and goodbye. Have a great day. Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.